Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Toilets to Titles 2022 NFL Draft Review. I'm doing all 32 of the teams again this year, like I did last year. Last week I did Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tonight, we're doing the New York Giants. As you can see, as you all know, our millions of fans, millions of viewers, I'm a Giants fan. We also have another in-house Giants fan here at Toilets to Titles. His name is also Joe, but he goes by @Tickets to Fantasy. Joe, how's it going, my friend?
Hey, very good, man. Can't wait. The draft was great a couple weeks ago. Always good to have that as you're creeping through the off season, waiting for the next year to start, and free agency, the draft. The smoke is cleared, and it's time to see where we sit going into training camp. Right?
It is, man. It's like, honestly, as a team, as a fan of a team that's been bad for a really long time, I think I was probably looking forward to this draft by the second or third week of October, Joe. So
when we knew it was going to be another good pick.
Yep, I'm like, all right, man. All right. I guess we're probably going to stink. And I'm not the type of fan that I don't root for losses, but it was just the writing was on the wall. We're going to be picking high again, and I'm also watching the Bears games to make sure that they're losing because we have their pick from last year too. So, and we wound up picking at 5 and 7, man. I'll tell you that first night at least, man, that was awesome. Everything fell. How did you feel about and we did here at Toilets Titles. We had a really great round one draft episode here.
It was great.
It was 6 or 7 people, and Joe was one of the people on there. I actually couldn't make it live because I organized a get together downtown at a bar with my friends. I've been doing that for 10 years, but I did call in after the Giants two picks.
We had you on site at a bar, and then we had George was on site at the draft, right?
Oh, you know what? Actually, it was Rich.
Rich was on site at the draft.
Yeah, Rich, he was on site in Vegas.
Presentation. We had bar presentation.
It was cool. It was awesome, man. The Giants fans at this time, for the first time in a long time, this was a draft where Giants fans were hooting and hollering and clapping. So it's good to see. I know I was too. And man, I felt like let's start off real quick talking about Thibodeaux and Neal, because I've been hearing surprisingly a lot of people committing Joe Shane. I'm not knocking Joe Shane. I just think it's kind of overblown where people are saying he played it perfectly because he could have won with Neal, but then they would have lost Thibodeaux. And I'm just thinking yeah, well, isn't that the obvious thing? Thibodeaux was there, and you had the 3 offensive linemen still there. None of the offensive linemen went before the Giants picked at 5. So to me, it only made sense. And originally, I was like, God, we have to get out of here with Kwanu or Neal. But when Thibodeaux was right there, and we were still going to have the pick of at least 2 of the offensive linemen, 2 of the tackles at 7. I'm like, you got to take Thibodeaux.
Yeah, and I think you were starting to ask me, how I felt in general, especially about that first round, and it kind of made me feel like the way I felt about how Mac Jones fell to the Patriots last year. The Giants just sat there. Yeah. There were tons of rumors about potential trades, moving down, all these things. They just sat there. They let Thibodeaux fall to them because of the personality issues and whatnot, whatever it may be. They obviously put him through the ringer. What we found out after the draft about some of his screening and everything, and then even more so, Neal falling to them at 7. You couldn't ask for more as long as these guys pan out. It it had to have gone exactly how he wanted it to.
You know what? It's all in the players now. Joe Shane did exactly the right thing. The Giants did exactly the right thing in terms of who they picked. There was no hard decision in my mind. So when Thibodeaux was there, I would have certainly been happy with Gardner if it was if Thibodeaux were gone, and say if the Jets took Thibodeaux and it were Gardner. I'm not complaining. We got a great shutdown corner potentially, but they took exactly who they should have taken, and it filled incredible needs that we. Go ahead.
Both of their lines are so inferior. Both the offensive and defensive line is, it's not necessarily the fun picks, right? You're a football fan. You get teams got 5 and 7. You got deep wideouts all over the board. It's not the most glamorous fun picks, especially the Neal pick. And I was just reading something. Neal was 380 in 8th grade. Holy shit.
Good man.
And he's down to 340, 345.
A lot of refried beans for that boy.
Yeah, right. It's what they needed. And real quick, and I'd love to get your take on this, but you're watching them last year. They added Galladay. So you got Galladay, you got Shepard. They drafted Kadarius Toney. You got Ingram. You're loaded there at wideout.
Yep.
That's above average. You get Barkley.
Absolutely.
You get Barkley coming back with Booker, who's a great backup. So now you've got, all of the talent position weapons offensively were there. Yeah. And it still imploded on them.
They were there in spirit oftentimes. Because honestly, I had a feeling going in, I was like, and this is nothing to do with the coaching or anything. I'm like going in, I'm like, realistically, like it's going to take Barkley some time to beat Barkley. Now we never really saw Barkley anyway, but it was going to take some time. Galladay hadn't been on the practice field because of injuries.
He was horrible.
I don't know if Sterling Shepard or Evan Ingram. Oh, Tony hadn't been there as well. Right. He was injured. Actually, he was in training camp, but he was injured. So he was a rookie. So, don't get me wrong. We still had Sterling Shepard. You still had Slate. You still had Evan Ingram. There's plenty there. I figured we'd look better. Game 1 against Denver, quickly, whatever, I was like, this is what I saw in game 1 of that offense was, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is what you had an entire offseason. This is what it was the same thing as at the beginning of the previous season. Like in 2021, the team got better and better and better. The offensive, they seemed to find, they were never great, but they started working behind this power running game in 2020, Judge's first year. I don't know, I guess I shouldn't go off on this tangent, but I wasn't shocked by the slow start. But I was shocked by how bad they looked. They still looked incompetent. It still looked like, to this day, I can't tell people what I was seeing, especially last year. I don't know what I was seeing. Any additional thoughts on that? Oh, it was just so bad. Like I haven't seen that bad since maybe I'm 50 years old. So I remember the Dave Brown era and the mid-90s.
Ray Hanley days, right?
Yeah. And that was even after Hanley. That was like Dan Reeves' last 2 years. And that was probably the worst I'd seen before Joe Judge came along. I don't know what I was looking at for the past 2 years. And people just want to blame Jason Garrett. I think Joe Judge has a lot to do with this too. I think it was his offense, and this is what he wanted, and Garrett was trying to run schemes within what he wanted. And not that I don't think Garrett was ever the right hire, but I think Joe Judge, he talked when he first came in as head coach that he wanted to, he didn't want to try to force round pegs into square holes or vice versa. And I think he tried to exactly do that on the offensive side of the ball. Round pegs into square holes. I think the offense made no sense for the type of weapons they had whatsoever. Galladay was hardly even being used when he was on the field. He wasn't really being targeted. It was absolutely ridiculous. And for them to get out of the 2020 draft, for them to get out of the 2021 draft, last year's draft, without one offensive lineman was absolute malpractice. Absolute malpractice. I don't care how optimistic you were about the offensive line.
That's why there's a new regime there now.
That's why there's a new regime. And I'm not even saying they had to take Rashawn Slater in the first round, but to not take Ben Cleveland in the third round when they traded up in the third round to take Aaron Robinson. And that's nothing against Aaron Robinson. We had Ben Cleveland in there in the third round. He started for the Ravens. And he had, Trey Smith, I think his name was, a guy who had some sort of blood clot issues, at least in high school. And it caused him to drop to the 6th round to the Chiefs. And there he was starting for Kansas City this year. And you're telling me you couldn't spend a 4th round or a 6th round pick on this guy? But you got Gary Brightwell, running back, special teams ace. Give me a break. So adios to that crew. Adios. We'll see how the new front office does, man. But let's get rolling on this. The first round was awesome. It was such a good start. It felt like competency. And who was our first pick, Joe? Edge Kayvon Thibodeaux. I never would have thought months ago that he would fall to us. I mean, there are other players I would have loved too. Like I said, Sauce Gardner. I mean, I wasn't really big on Stingley. Scared me. I would have been high on Sauce Gardner. I would have been high on Aiden Hutchinson. I was open to the idea of Trayvon Walker too, but honestly, if Thibodeaux was gone before 5, and we still have all 3 tackles still sitting us in the face, I would have been fine trading back from the 5 spot.
I actually thought I expected them to trade one of those picks in the first round. I
think trade back to 12 and get Jermaine Johnson or something like that.
Yeah, and it feels like if these 2 guys weren't there specifically for those 2 picks, they probably would have. But
I think so.
Kayvon's risky. Kayvon's probably a little riskier than some of the other guys they could have gone with because of, he was injured last season. He was a little inconsistent. They obviously all of the reasons, everybody's already beat with a dead horse. But when you're the Giants and that pass rush has been so stagnant, they need Thibodeaux, and then they need more. It's not like he's going to turn them into the meanest pass rush in the league. It's just a piece, but it's a big piece, and it's a very necessary piece. Just like Neal is too. It's a piece. The difference is I think the offensive line is almost, the offensive line, if it's a prime rib, there's only 5 or 10 minutes left, hopefully, where the defensive line, I think you just pop that prime rib in and Thibodeaux's the first 10 minutes. You still need to cook the rest of that. I'm hoping that Neal is like the finishing touches, and now we have a top 15. I'm not going to be greedy. Can we have a top 15 offensive line next year?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? With the offense, and we've got some offensive linemen to go over in a little bit, but just generally speaking, having two serious bookend tackles and hopefully a competent play caller in our new offensive, in our new head coach, Brian Dable, and we've got Mike Kafka, whose title is OC, offensive coordinator from the Chiefs, but I don't think he's been calling the plays, at least not this year. I think it's going to be Dable calling the plays. We have two good offensive minds. The point I'm trying to get to is that besides having two solid bookends, the interior of that line needs to improve as well. But you should have competency there in terms of play calling, in terms of working with what you have, which should help improve everything, which should in itself make the offensive line look even better than maybe it really is talent-wise, in between the tackles, that is. So, it all, in my opinion, it all goes together. It's not just one player. It's not just one unit. The Giants' offense wasn't great under Pat Shurmur, and that was during a total rebuild. And even with the rookie quarterback Daniel Jones, and even they looked better than what we saw over the past 2 years when they had many more weapons under Joe Judge. So I think the coaching has so much to do with it. It has to work synchronously. It really does, and it all has to work together at the same time. But Thibodeaux, man, in my opinion, there shouldn't have been any hesitation in taking this guy. There's always something about a player. I don't care if he's drafted number 1. There's always going to be something you can question. Could have tried a little harder on this play, whatever. There's always nitpicking. I guarantee there was nitpicking with Lawrence Taylor in 1981 when he was picked number 2. Not that anyone was saying that the Giants shouldn't draft him, but I guarantee if you go back and look at scouting reports, you're going to see some area of concern or areas of improvement. You know what I mean? So for me, Thibodeaux, once it broke where Thibodeaux and Neal were there, you could not trade back for 5 and 7. You had to take those picks. And I thought Thibodeaux was the right move taking him at 5. The Giants pass rush, when you think about it, looks like, listen, if he lives up to the billing, Thibodeaux, you're looking at him and Ojulari. And who was even the guy that got undrafted free agent they took from Pittsburgh Steelers last year?
Yep. I don't remember his name either, but I know.
I don't know why I'm brain farting on his name, but they're actually looking, pretty good. They're not. For a long time there was nobody there whatsoever. Yeah. They actually had a decent interior defensive line, but no pass rush whatsoever. So, so this was a great, exciting pick. He was great value at 5. They made the right decision. If he's going to succeed, and I have no reason to believe he won't, but if he's going to, it's all on him. It's just all on him. That's it. They made the right move. So I was super excited when they got that pick. Let's move on to Evan Neal and our other offensive linemen. So I'm not going to do, just so the audience understands, I'm not doing this pick by pick by pick. I'm leading off with Evan Neal here, who was our second pick in the first round, but I also want to bring up the 2 guards we got from North Carolina. Evan Neal, I think overall probably the best offensive lineman in the draft. It's funny because draft night when I called into the show, I said, well, I kind of wanted like Ekwonu a smidgen better. And I'm thinking about it later on. I'm like, why even think that? Because Ekwonu was known to be probably a slightly better run blocker than Neal. And then Charles Cross is known to be is seen as a slightly better pass blocker than Neal. But Neal is really good at both, even if he's not better than Cross at pass blocking or better than Neal, better than Ekwonu at run blocking. He's still really good. He's a great, well-rounded tackle who's got experience. I think 2 years experience at right tackle and he played left tackle last year, I believe. So this guy is coming in, plug and play right tackle across from
And he's played the best competition.
That's just like Andrew Thomas did a few years ago when they drafted. Just like Andrew Thomas, they drafted him in from Georgia. The best competition. You see it on the tape. You see it on the film. Who he's going up against. And Neal too. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if for some reason he didn't succeed at tackle, or they happen to draft or get their hands on another great tackle, they could always move him into guard if they wanted to. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but no matter where you play this guy, it's going to be an absolute monster.
Yep.
Saquon Barkley is going to love this guy. And so is Daniel Jones.
I'm reading about these North Carolina offensive linemen. I mean,
they're interesting.
And they're close. They're close friends, obviously playing, but it is really interesting. They're both film junkies. They've got some really interesting traits to them.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and I don't know how realistic it is to, I wouldn't think, especially the fifth round. I don't think Mckethen's going to be tracking to start or anything like that. But I love getting more youth there. And Ezeudu, I know, was ranked pretty. I don't think he's plug and play, but I think there's probably some expectations that he makes some contributions year one. What do you think?
Oh, yep, I agree with you 100%, Joe. I would say I wouldn't be surprised if I'd be surprised actually if he's starting. I'll say this. I'll say there's a 50-50 chance he's starting at one of the guard positions. Our center is really not good, Feliciano. He's a known name. It's funny how it seems like every Giants fan, I follow like 35 Giant content creators, and everyone seemed to know the name Feliciano from Buffalo, our new center, before we even got him. I was even familiar with him for whatever reason. And but the guy's really not a very good center. We don't have anyone backing him up. We did get one good guard. I think it's Glenowski, I think was his name. That guy, I think, was going to be the left guard, I believe. He should be fine. I forgot who the right guard was that we signed as a free agent. Azudu should be competing with that guy, at least one of the guards, the guard that's not that good. I give him a 50-50 chance that he is starting at the beginning of the season. I'll say 40% chance. I think he is going to need some time. But I do think he's a good pick, but I agree with you, Joe. I think it's probably sooner rather than later this year. He is going to be starting at some point, I would assume. They're very high on this guy. And it's funny because I wanted Azudu we took, okay, so Evan Neal we took with the 7th pick in the first round. Joshua Azudu we took with our first pick in the 3rd round, and that was the pick I had targeted for another offensive lineman, a guard or a center. And there was a guy named Dylan Parham out of Kentucky who I liked a lot. And that was really the guy, and that was a name I was familiar with too. I'd done a lot of reading on this guy too. I think Parham is probably more ready to go in terms of being plug and play. But here's the thing about Josh Azudu. What I thought was really, really interesting is this guy. I have him listed here as guard, and that's where he's going to be playing the NFL guard. The guy's got a serious potential to be a swing tackle for the team as well. Because he played actually in college, he played 1,900 snaps overall on the offensive line. 2/3 of those snaps were played at guard. Most of them were at left guard. One-third of the rest of his snaps he played at tackle. The vast majority at left tackle. So you got a guy here who's got, should be, and apparently he's very smart. When he gets on the field, he seems like a really humble guy when he's interviewed, like a real big teddy bear. But apparently, he was on the field. He plays really mean, and that's what you need in your offensive lineman. So I do like this guy a lot. It's exactly what I was targeting for beginning of the 3rd round. You can usually get like good guards, good centers, guys on the interior of the line who have versatility, whether it's playing 2 different guard positions or guard center or guard tackle. And that's what this guy brings. And he's a big dude too.
North Carolina too was heavy on RPO. Their offense.
Yeah, they like to run the ball.
Yeah,
and they like to run the ball.
And we also, we obviously saw a lot of that from Daniel Jones last year. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if the best Giants and the best Daniel Jones is them leaning heavy on RPO, but at the same time, it was probably the most exciting thing about watching that Giant team last year was Daniel Jones in those situations. He made a lot of plays for them.
I think they are gonna have a lot of RPO. I do, and but but Azudu's a big dude. I am really excited about him. Like I said, I had my preference for Dylan Parham in the beginning of the third round, and I knew much more about him. It's funny because I remember a list coming out like a week before the draft, Joe, and I'd done a lot of reading over the past months, watched quite a few videos, but did a lot of reading. And there were two names I saw on this list of like late risers, guys who were like hot names in the draft process right now. One of them was Joshua Zudu. I didn't really read too much into it. I just didn't read too much into him. Like, whatever. I read enough about offensive linemen anyway. And one of them was Joshua Zudu. The other was Cordell Flott. And we got both of them. We'll get to the secondary in a little bit. Marcus Mckethen. I'll admit, I didn't do too much reading up on Mckethen. How about yourself, Joe? Was there anything you can tell me about him?
Everything with these guys, it seems to be, it's like they're a package duo, right? Everything seems to be about the
Good
chemistry
story
they had together. Yeah, which is absolutely great. I mean, Mckethen 340, the more prototypical typical type player. It sounds like
yeah.
Running, one of my favorite things was running inside zone to the right versus a 4-3 defense. So, like stuff like that is really interesting to kind of hear him talk about. Sounds like he'll be more of an organic run blocker than what they've had their run on. I mean, Daniel Jones has run further his life, but Saquon Barkley, you still don't even know what to make of this guy's career because their offensive line from a run blocking perspective has been so abysmal that, anything to breathe life into that group.
Just Saquon, just stay healthy. Just stay healthy.
That too.
I'll tell you, after his rookie year, I didn't, I think I, like most Giants fans, were not really into, taking Saquon with the number 2 pick in 2018, I think it was. It wasn't anything against Saquon. I'm like, we need to rebuild. Let's trade back. And but after his rookie year, I'm like, hell, man, I'm down Saquon 2,000 yards. It was like 1,500 yards, 1,200 yards rushing, 800
right personality,
like that. Great personality. I'm like, you know what? I love this guy because I always saw him as well, not just as running back, but as a weapon. He's not like Josh Jacobs, from the Raiders, and that's nothing against him. He's like a prototypical running back. This guy is a weapon. He's more like a Kamara or McCaffrey. You know what I mean? So I think he can succeed. I understand about last year. A lot of things went wrong, and I don't know if he was ever fully recovered, maybe even mentally from that injury that he suffered the year before. This year, I hope he succeeds, and we'll see what happens after that. In the following season, whether he's back with the Giants or gone. But I really want to see him succeed, and hopefully here. It's funny. I realized when I was putting these slides together, we took an offensive lineman in the first round, the third round, and the fifth round. I was complaining before, and rightfully so, that we did not take an offensive lineman last draft. Not one. Not even an interior guy. The year before that, what did we do? We took Andrew Thomas in the first round. We took Matt Pert in the third round, and we took Shane Lemieux in the fifth round. I don't know. Things are lining up. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, Joe. I don't know. But
time will tell.
Exactly. I was putting the slide together. I was just like, interesting. But I did like the third round for Ezeudu, and I'm not complaining that they took him. It was the type of player he is what I really had in mind. First pick in the third round, you can usually find a good interior lineman there, and they got themselves a really, really good prospect. I'm really excited about him. And Marcus Mckethen, you know what? Maybe he just winds up being a depth guy, kind of like Lemieux. I think Lemieux, I certainly wasn't sold on Lemieux being like, either, like a good starter or a long-term starter or an eventual starter. I know he's supposed to start last year and he wound up getting injured and missing the rest of the year. But I certainly wasn't sold on Lemieux, but at least I saw Lemieux was a pretty good run blocker.
Yeah, he was a pleasant. I think he's been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, Lemieux, I thought some people were like, oh, Lemieux. I'm like, dude, his fifth round pick, he's a pretty good run blocker. Maybe he needs to work on pass protection. Maybe he'll never get there, but he gives you something. And the way I see it is that it's depth. It's a fifth round pick. If you can be successful depth as a fifth round pick, that's great. If they're giving you more than that, like potential starter, even if it's just like a decent starter, that's gravy. All right, man. All right, buddy. So let's move on. The most controversial pick in the New York Giants draft class and possibly the entire 2022 draft class. Wan'dale Robinson, wide receiver. What did you think when they drafted him?
I'll tell you what, the more I read about this one is really infatuating. It's going to be so let in the context.
Time will tell.
the context here is, what was it, a day before the draft that the Kadarius Toney rumors dropped all of a sudden?
A few days. Yeah, it was. I think it was like the week before. So I think well, you know what? I'm sorry. The report broke on a Friday. And
so
then
6 days before the draft?
It was Saturday. That next day, he was actually in camp.
Yeah. And I think you have to have that context with this pick, because to your initial question, your instinctual response when you see this pick is, well, wait a minute. So I'm all, you know what? You want to go get a wideout after the abysmal performance of their wide receivers last year? I'm all for that. But why are you getting a carbon copy of Kadarius Toney? Well, now, that even made the draft pick because you heard that about Toney and it's been quiet since. The draft pick makes that sound more legit, because I'm not sure you would want both of those guys as two of your top 4 wideout, just from they're both very small and they play the same role.
Right. And, I think Toney's actually, I don't think he's not like Wan'dale is small. Toney,
5'8".
I forgot his. Yeah, he's 5'8", and that probably means he's really 5'7" and 3/4. But Toney, I don't think he's as small as people think he is. I don't have his stats in front of me, but I know what you mean. It's not like this is Kenny Galladay you're talking about here. It's going to be. And here's the thing too: if they did want to trade Toney, and I don't want to trade Toney, I just want Toney to realize he's got to take this stuff seriously, or the Giants seriously. I don't know, because I think this guy is really electric and really exciting, and could be like the really most fun we've had since OBJ was traded away, and. But where was I going with that? But, the thing with Toney is that, too, it's like, I mean, I could see them, all right, they get the carbon copy. And there's also, listen, if you did trade him for some pick next year, it could be that, hey, maybe he starts the regular season, he's balling, and they decide to trade him. I can't think that. I don't think they're going to trade him. I was going to bring up some scenario, but I can't, unless someone's
I hope
like,
they don't.
all right,
I don't want them to. I don't want another personality.
Either.
I mean, if it's a big personality issue, that's one thing.
Yeah,
and if they're going to trade him and they know that now, and they had the foresight to go get a carbon copy based on what they saw him do last year, I'm all for that. If they're going to try to play them both, it's not that I'm against that. I'm reading, and it goes back to what type of person is it too. I'm reading something now. I would quote unquote from some founder of some fitness institution in Kentucky. I would never bet against Wan'dale Robinson, was the quote. So, maybe this guy brings one of those chips on his shoulder with Toney's talent minus the personality or off the field issues or whatever it may be. But it does sound like draft pundits also thought that they kind of reached for him.
And they took him. Honestly, I don't often buy into the reach argument. I think, I think a lot of times, like, I'll just keep it short. Like, I don't always buy into the reach argument. My concern wasn't that. I did feel that Wan'dale, and I was very familiar with this wide receiver class. I always liked Wan'dale, not as much as Coach. Coach loves Wan'dale. I always felt like Wan'dale could be a fair second-round pick for a few teams. And it's funny because, I felt like, I'm like, maybe like Kansas City or San Francisco, like these really creative offenses. And
I want you to keep going, but it was rumored that the Chiefs were that's where a lot of people slated him in to go, to your point.
Who apparently liked him? Apparently Joe Shane was the assistant general manager of Buffalo still. He scouted Wan'dale a lot. Buffalo scouted Wan'dale a lot. So he knew that it could have been that Buffalo was interested in taking Wan'dale, in the second round, especially with what's his name leaving there, Cole Beasley leaving. That's a possibility. But it's funny because I felt like, all right, I think like Wan'dale for the right team could be second round value. And I wasn't thinking the Giants, to be honest with you. I was thinking 49ers, Chiefs. And it's funny, as soon as he was drafted, like 10 minutes later, I'm just like looking up videos on Wan'dale, and I came across a PFF scouting video on him. And the narrator said he'll be really good second round value for the 49ers and the Chiefs. And I started laughing. But I'm thinking like, well, you know what? We do have Mike Kafka from Kansas City. They brought him over for a reason. They're not bringing him just to be, give him a nice title, and that's it. I know Dable is going to be the OC, I think, for at least the first year. But apparently Kafka does have a say in the game plans and what they're trying to put, what he's working with Dable and trying to put something together.
Yep.
So I don't think this means, even when the day he was drafted, the second he was drafted, I didn't necessarily think that meant that Tony was going to be traded, but it totally makes sense. The fit, right? Everything just coming into place. Like, oh my God, it makes sense. I'm like, but I do want to see what these guys can do together. You got the minds of Dable and hopefully Kafka, who was the quarterback's coach over in Kansas City. We want to see how Wan'dale is going to fit in, and it could be really damn exciting if these guys stay healthy, and if we have an offensive line. It could be really damn exciting. Think about this, Joe, real quick, before we go into Daniel Bellinger. Can you imagine if, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, Andrew Thomas, who's gotten significantly better over the past year and a half, right? Say he balls out this year. I mean, does really, really well. Saquon Barkley, fully recovered from his injury, playing behind a better line. Say he gives us the shades of rookie Saquon. Not out of the realm of possibility, is it? Right? It's not crazy at all,
No,
right?
it's not. It's
Say
not crazy.
Kadarius Toney plays up to like what he was playing, how he played against New Orleans and Dallas last year.
Yeah.
I mean, if he gets his head screwed on straight, it's not crazy thought. It's not a crazy thing. It's not crazy thinking, right?
No, it's realistic. It's realistic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things, even on our channel that's going out into the multiverse that
Yeah,
got a lot
and
less chance of happening than Saquon running for 1,000, Kadarius catching for 1,000, and no, absolutely. And I've been expecting it. It's not like it's been a horrible roster every year. That's the part that's even almost more frustrating. I know. And even on D, they had Bradbury for a couple of years, who turned into one of the better cover corners in the league too, and they flushed that down the freaking toilet too. It's just wasted talent for 3, 4, 5 years. I know.
That's why I felt too. I'm like this. I actually thought Gettleman did a pretty good job of putting some talent on this roster. I thought the coaching sucked. And here's where I was getting with that. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Daniel Jones, better line, good offensive players, good head coach, good offensive system, and takes a big step forward. I'm not saying that step forward has to be that he's going to be the quarter. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Joe.
I know. Finish. I want to hear what you got.
Say he puts up a really good, 32 touchdowns. Even I'll give you 16 interceptions, but hardly any fumbles. Over 4,000 yards. It's a good season. Not a great season, not Hall of Fame. Can you imagine? And I don't think any of that's out of the realm of possibility. We're talking about all of Dave Gettleman's first-round picks.
What does Daniel Jones have to do this year to start for the New York Giants next year? That's the question. Because right now he's only playing for them in 2023 if he is good for them this year.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I hear that question a lot, and not necessarily addressed to me, but I hear it like other shows addressed to people, and I think about it, and I'm always like, well, I wouldn't put numbers necessarily to that. It's not out of fear. It's just, for me, it's more like, hey, I'll know it when I see it. I want to know the situations. Like, obviously, if this year is like last year, the year before that, you can pretty much forget about it. But if he puts up something like, I don't know, say 26 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions, he runs for a few, other touchdowns. But you see, there were a bunch of drop passes, like Evan Ingram was famous for. Like the scenario. I need to see the whole picture.
Let me give you one.
But he stays healthy.
I have a Giant fan. They go 8-9, right? Because we're 17 games now.
I'd be ecstatic with 8-9.
We go 8-9, and the offense the offense is a little better than the defense. Does Daniel Jones Jones the starting quarterback in 2023 in that situation?
Depends on, was the offense just only good because, Saquon had a great year?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's not the only reason, but hey, listen, for example, you look at 2 years ago, Judge's first year. They did not, there was not a good offense. Daniel Jones looked lost at times. Yeah. I could see from game one. Yeah.
And that offensive line was horrible.
I felt like they dialed. It wasn't even just the line was horrible, but they dialed it back. They're like, dude, don't take any risks. First of all, cut the crap with the fumbling, rightfully so. It was almost like they didn't want him to cough up the ball. Meanwhile, I remember what the guy did his rookie year with nobody around him. Saquon playing on a hobbled leg the whole year. you never got Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate on the field on the same day because they always had concussions. You take your pick. You can get Tate or Sterling Shepard. Evan Ingram was gone after week 6. He was injured. Like I said, Saquon was running around hobbled. Darius Slayton had a big year as a rookie. It was Daniel Jones, Darius Slayton, even Caden Smith at the end of the year. And I saw he was on pace for 32 touchdowns and 16 interceptions his rookie year with a shitty offensive line. The weapons which were mediocre at best, because they certainly didn't have any alphas, were injured. He was throwing the ball to guys off the street. And I saw that. I'm like, this guy's got a lot of ability. And then they bring in Judge and Garrett, and no one did well. Not the only player who improved under Joe Judge over time was Andrew Thomas. Second half of his rookie year, much better than the first half. Last year, he was really good. He got hurt, unfortunately, but he was really good. Other than that, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram. Galladay was injured a lot, but even when he was on the field, he wasn't being targeted. There was nobody.
It was horrible.
Nobody got better.
For 20 million plus, that was bad. But
yeah.
I'm rooting for Daniel Jones. I mean, I don't want to. It's been a long enough of a rebuild. I don't want them to have to go draft another quarterback to start.
I realize it's realistic. I'm down with reality. I'm down with reality. I root for Daniel Jones like no one ever rooted for in my life.
Well, it's an interesting situation because normally when you bring in a new GM and a new, and they're all from Buffalo, the first thing those guys would normally do is let's go get our new coach, let's go get our new quarterback, and they're giving him, and they kind of have to because of the financial reasons and contract. They're giving him a shot. He's gonna get a shot that a lot of guys with a new regime wouldn't get.
Yeah.
And it's going to be super interesting to see
absolutely.
With the guys they put out there. But I know we got a couple of draft picks left still, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, they had 11 picks overall. So
yeah.
All right, we'll go through this a little
and that's
faster.
A testament, real quick. Just as take a step back and look at their draft from the whole draft versus player by player. They've done a great job, and because we just talked about how they didn't trade down from these 2 picks this year, and they took Thibodeaux and they took Neal. As they should have. They have done a nice job in the last 18 to 24 months, and that's 2 different regimes now of collecting assets, draft assets, and everything. And again, time will tell to see who does and doesn't pan out. But they have done a good job of picking their spots of when they've made those moves versus when they've picked the player. So I'm encouraged by seeing that at least.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Joe. And I think most Giants fans are happy about that. But I agree with you. Last year's draft class was very good too. And the picks made sense. They should have gotten an offensive lineman, but the picks made sense. The one thing I would have done in the second round instead of Wan'dale Robinson, and I still feel this way, is that I didn't want to get that aggressive. He traded back twice in the second round. I knew we probably couldn't keep our cornerback, James Bradbury. I'm like, dude, Andrew Booth Jr. is sitting there out of Clemson, the cornerback. I'm like, please get this guy.
Do you think they didn't because they liked Flott that much?
I don't think possible? So. No, I think he was trying to get more picks, and he said, he wanted more shots at it. And ideally, you always want more shots, more swings in the bat in the draft. But the way I saw it, I was like, hey, man, we need talent at key positions, not necessarily more bodies. And the deeper you go in the draft, the more likely these guys that you're picking are just going to be depth at best. If you can get players like that for vet minimum, or guys like undrafted free agents, I felt like getting Kenneth Booth Jr. Even over Kyler Gordon was there too, but I think Kenneth Booth Jr. was better.
I mean, I like that he comes from LSU.
Flott. Oh, we'll get to Flott. I'm not down on Flott. I would have been super psyched if they took Booth instead of Robinson. And I'm not knocking you, Wan'dale. I'm not knocking you, but it just made sense to me that we should take Booth, not trade back the second time. I never really wanted the first trade back with the Jets, 2 picks, get a 5th round pick. Trade back.
I'm forgetting about those. I'm forgetting about.
I'm like, dude, Andrew Booth is there. Don't mess around. Get this guy. You got yourself an extra 5th round pick. Great. And that's what I really wanted. And if we have drafted Booth to be, the outside corner to take over for Bradbury, and then gotten Flott where we did, back end of the 3rd, dude, that's awesome. That's really good talent. We're going to get to
Flott was only the nickel starter last year, by the way, for LSU.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? We'll get to Flott in a second.
Yes.
Daniel Bellinger. This is a pick I liked, and this is actually a tight end that I had my eye on. And again, I was very familiar with this tight end class. I actually the guy who I probably like the most. I mean, besides the obvious number one, Trey McBride, I really like. I'm thinking about when I say who I like the most. I'm talking about okay, I want to get myself a tight end, but I don't necessarily want to get him in the second round, or the third round. I'd like to get maybe Jake Ferguson if he falls to the fourth round. The guy who won Jeremy Ruckert, who the Jets took. I think they took him in the third round. Like those are guys. I even like Kolar as well. Charlie Kolar. I forgot where he went. I think Kolar went to the Ravens. Surprise, surprise. Who love their tight ends. He was a guy I liked a lot. But I also like Daniel Bellinger. And when they took him in the fourth round, I know most people weren't familiar with this guy. I was familiar with him in San Diego State, which is the program he came from. It's actually one of the college teams I kind of root for, and I like this guy a lot. I think he's a sleeper, in my opinion. He's the type of tight end that I like, and that is listen. If you can give me a tight end who's gonna, give me 1,200 yards in receiving every year, I'm not complaining. I'll take it. Me myself, I like a tight end who is a blocker, but is also a legitimate threat to go out. He's like a savvy receiver who finds the spaces in the zone coverage, can give you a legitimate target third down, who's got good hands, and give you a legitimate target like third down and also in the red zone. Bellinger
Yeah.
does that. This guy's got really good hands, and he's kind of like a product of San Diego's offense in that they ask him to block mostly. But the guy actually he's not unathletic. He's actually pretty athletic. He is one of the better blockers in this draft out of the tight end class, and he's known to have really good hands. So I'm really excited about this guy, and I don't think he's going to be starting day one probably, but I think he, like Azudu, is going to be starting at some point fairly early this season.
What I like about
TE1.
Bellinger is he passes the eye test, which sometimes
Yeah,
doesn't count for a lot, but sometimes it's nice to see. And they just
yeah,
drafted, if you think about the context of the draft, they drafted the 5'8" wide receiver we just spent some time on. So now you're thinking about, well, Tony and the rookie and, Shepard, they're not big at wide out other than Slayton. And now they go and get a 6'6", 250-pound tight end with good hands. So I'm
yeah,
certainly happy to see that. And he's just ripped in general.
yeah,
And to your point, too, he did grade out as one of the better blocking tight ends in the draft. My other question that this kind of lends me to
That's
is
what he did in college too.
yeah.
That was
And
his
then,
role.
if you think about the Giants tight end situation in general, Evan Ingram's in Jacksonville now, correct?
Yes, yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the Giants, what was that? A 5-year deal for Ricky Seals Jones or no?
Oh no, it was like a year. It was like
Was it a 1 year? Okay. I know they brought on Ricky Seals Jones. So I'm assuming he's number one on the depth chart going into the season.
Atkins, I think, is the other tight end they brought,
Right.
I think. But yeah, these guys are placeholders.
So it's interesting to see though where Seals Jones, he can't stay healthy, even though I do like him. From a fantasy perspective, Seals Jones is that guy where when your starting tight end gets hurt and he's the backup that's going to start now, he is the tailor-made $3,500 DraftKings DFS play to get you 4 for 50 and a touchdown. On those weeks where you need it. That's what I think.
Yeah, you can feel okay picking him up.
But and he's shown some flashes. But to be completely honest, Bellinger, I think, is going to have a chance to make some noise early if he comes in, works hard. If he shows the blocking prowess right off the bat, that will give him more opportunities and more snaps to show what he can do with his hands and with the ball.
Yeah. I agree with you, Joe. And I'm excited about him. I'm not excited like a Kadarius Toney, like, whoa, this guy's electric. Can't wait to see him like outdance someone, outdance someone on the field, like tap dance around, 3 different guys in the secondary. But I think I have a feeling, I think this guy's going to be a savvy player. I think he's going to be sneaky good, like Kevin Boss was when they drafted him. I think in the 5th round it was in 2007, I believe. I think this guy is he's going to be sneaky good. I think in the receiving game. Again, not an 1,100-yard receiver, but a guy who you can count on third down, who's going to he's a guy I think who knows how to find some open space there, and he is physical. He can take a bump when he's trying to, from a linebacker or a safety who's trying to cover him. he can take the bump and hold on to the ball. The guy's got really, really good hands. So I'm excited about the guy. And again, he's more like the type of tight end that I like a lot. Excited to see him. Okay, Cordell Flott and Dane Belton. I love that name, Dane Belton. It's so funny. Me and a lot of other Giants content creators I've been listening to, they always want to call Daniel Bellinger. They want to keep calling him Dane Bellinger. We keep mixing it up, but it's safety Dane Belton, who went in the 5th round out of Iowa, and Cordell Flott, who we were talking about before. Slot corner, nickel corner out of LSU. And it's funny because when he was first picked, I was actually doing my own video live for day 2, and just giving my thoughts on the picks as they rolled across the screen as they were announced. And they did Azudu for the Giants. I'm like, Zudu, and I had to think about it, like, oh yeah, I remember Azudu. I'm like, I kind of want to Dylan Park, but Azudu, and the more I read about Azudu afterwards, the more I liked it anyway. And but when they drafted Flott, again, this was another name on that list that I saw of like late risers in the draft, getting a lot of interest. And originally I was like, Cordell Flott. I'm like, here's the thing with Cordell Flott too. And we're talking about, he's a nickel corner. It's really hard to get an outside boundary corner like an Andrew Booth Jr. In the end of the 3rd round. It's pretty much, it's past. It's over. Now, unless you got a guy who like suffered a major knee injury last year, you want to take a flyer, and then like he should have been a 1st round pick. Other than that, you're not getting like a really good boundary corner. You can get a guy who can maybe develop surprisingly down the road, but now you're kind of looking for like guys who give you flexibility, in the nickel, guys who can play the slot, who can play safety. I heard that Flott plays safety. I'm kind of surprised by that because this guy is like 170 pounds soaking wet. He's really thin, as you can tell by the picture. But he had a really good. Last year was his one good year, and it was very, very good. Now he was playing across. He was playing with Stingley, but it was Flott that had a really good year last year. And this guy can cover. He covers very well. And it's funny. There was one person I was listening to. I forgot who it was, but it's a guy who I really, an expert, an analyst who I really trust when it comes to evaluating cornerbacks, defensive backs coming out of college. And it was funny. He was talking about how he was watching a ton of video on Stingley, and he kept seeing Flott. Flott kept catching his eye. And I do think this guy had a really good year last year. One thing I like too is that he's from LSU, and LSU produces really good wide receivers and really good defensive backs. So I am excited about this guy. We do need an outside corner, but listen, that's who was here. You can never have enough depth in the secondary, and we'll see what Martindale is going to do with with his safeties and his cornerbacks.
Well, speaking of safeties, no, I'm going to say, you took care of Flott. Speaking of safety, I do think that where Flott could have potentially been a little bit of a reach there, Dane Belton, the more you read about him, I feel pretty goddamn good about where they got him.
Yep.
And he's coming from an extremely professional college defense in Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa.
Their running game and their defense is that's where they make their money and win their games and have their success. And he was all 10. First team all Big Ten honors last year as safety. And you're talking about a Power 5 conference. So Belton, it's going to be interesting to see their depth chart at safety is kind of interesting right now too. So I got to believe Belton's going to come in there and have, and it's not a cornerback. So it's not like he's not locking down. He's not making any, as you were saying, let's remind everybody, right? He's not making week 1 impact because he's going to lock down DeAndre Hopkins or something like that. However, you got a good character guy coming from a really professional school, one of the better defensive programs in the country, and all Big Ten honors. The Big Ten, it's a power conference, whether not necessarily because of their offense and their wideouts, but at the same time, for some of the reasons why maybe people don't love the Flott pick, I like the Belton pick. Yeah,
and the guy is actually a pretty good pass rusher too. He's a pretty good blitzer, I should say. And Wink Martindale likes to bring in the blitz from all over the place.
It's a great point, actually. You're right, because they just talked. They're talking about how he played the cash position in
Yeah,
in Iowa,
Ash.
which is a hybrid safety linebacker role. Yeah, based on the fact that he can get to the quarterback, which is
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great point. And for the 114th overall pick, I feel
Yeah.
like we may get some really good return there in a year or two down the road.
I agree. I'm excited to see him, and I'll tell you though, I would love to see Jabril Peppers in this defense and with
I know.
Martindale's defense. And what real before we move on to our last group here, the linebackers and defensive tackle, we'll try to make that really quick. Think about we were just talking about Iowa. They're a good program, right? The Buckeyes.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to go back to Wan'dale Robinson real quick. The guy put up 1,300 yards last year. In the Citrus Bowl game against Iowa, it was Kentucky against Iowa. The guy he put up 186 yards total in that game, and 86 of those yards came on the final drive. Basically, it was all 86 yards of it, except for the final one. It was Robinson brought Kentucky down for the winning drive. It was all him, literally, except for 1 yard run in the end zone by I think Kentucky's running back. But it was against Iowa. Wan'dale did have 186 yards, showed up big in that game. I think he even had a 50-yard catch in that drive, and he put up a total of 1,300 yards. But we were talking about Iowa. That reminded me, I forgot to mention that about Wan'dale. Really
Wan'dale's got a
impressive
really interesting story too. The more I'm reading about him, his dad was a big influence, but his dad was also in jail quite a bit in his childhood. His mother's been passed away for a long time. He seems to be a high character individual based on his. That's a really. It's going to be really intriguing to hear what's going on with this offense as we get to training camp. The wide receiving corps, obviously Daniel Jones and his progression as we get through training camp, and even the offensive line. I mean, the Giants are an odd X factor. I mean, right now, I'm sure people would book them for 5-12, but it wouldn't shock me come September if maybe all of a sudden they could be a 9-8 team that makes a little noise at the bottom of the wild card in the NFC.
Hey, listen, man, I think so too. I just think about like 2 years ago where they went like 6-10, I think it was, and they easily could have went. They've
lost a lot of close games in the last couple of years.
Yeah, a lot of close games. All right. Our last grouping here. Two linebackers and defensive tackles. So I like these late round picks. Let's start off with defensive tackle DJ Davidson. I really don't know much about him. The dude is big. He's kind of like Danny Shelton big. I wouldn't say he's that grotesquely fat. He's not like that. He's a big body, but DJ Davidson, who got out of Arizona State, 6th round pick, is a big body. Projects to be kind of like a depth run stuffer, in which we do need run stuffers. That's fine, but me myself, I'm not expecting like any type of like starting potential down the road. But I think this guy can give be possibly a two down run stuffer down the road.
Yeah, 330 pounds. I mean, it's really funny as the Giants have sucked for year after year. Their run defense seems to somehow stay not horrible. They seem to consistently be okay against the run. Davidson played under Antonio Pierce, former Giant Antonio Pierce.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
And so he's got an interesting upbringing there. But to your point, I mean, what are we talking about? A 6th round offensive lineman. So to your point, if he does hit the field, it's probably not good news early on. That being said, I'll always take a 327 pound, run stuffer to throw in.
I'll be honest, I would not have minded like even that 2nd round pick if like instead of like how I wanted Andrew Booth, if there had been a defensive tackle that I liked, who I thought could start day one, like be a 3-down defensive tackle, not just a run stuffer, but push the interior of the pocket, a nose tackle that is. If there was someone sitting there, I would have been fine with that too.
A Jim Burt,
cornerback. Yeah. Oh God, Jim Burt's one of my favorite Giants of all time. But if there had been like a good starting defensive tackle, nose tackle, sitting there in the 2nd round instead of Andrew Booth, and they took him, I wouldn't have complained about that too, because that is a concern of mine, is our nose tackle position. But hey, listen, I like these linebackers we got late in the draft here. I think there's a lot of promise with these guys. Mcfadden, we took in the 5th round. He was one of our 5th round picks. We had 3 5th round.
We acquired that pick from the Jets, I believe, 146.
Yes, for trading down 2 slots. You're absolutely right. And Mcfadden out of Indiana. Indiana's not a great football program, but Mcfadden was a pretty damn good player last year. And this is a guy this guy's a bit of a bruiser. He's got like all-purpose linebacker in him too. He's a good athlete, And this guy is also a guy who's got the ability to blitz from the line as a linebacker. And then we got Darion Beavers, who, quite frankly, I thought should have went in the 5th round, but we got him in the 7th round. I'm happy that we got him. This is another guy who's more. This guy's more of a thumper, Darion Beavers. Not really a coverage linebacker, but more of a downhill thumper. Plays the run well, and but he's also a guy who's successful getting the quarterback, on blitz plays. So there's even talk about him possibly playing some edge. So, but I don't know if that's actually going to happen. But I think these two guys they both have some blitz potential in them. They had blitz success in college, and I'm interested to see how Wink Martindale is going to use them. But for where we got these guys, Micah Mcfadden in the 5th round and Darion Beavers, especially in the 7th round, I really like the value there a lot. I really did.
Yeah, it feels like if you go out there and you quote unquote the draft experts, it feels like most people are saying the Giants did great at the beginning of the draft, great at the end of the draft. That feels like they're questionable picks, 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounders, 2nd and 3rd probably most specifically. But however, with what they got at the top alone, that should make this. I mean, you got to pray to God 10 years from now that this is considered to be a really important draft for the Giants, and it helped them turn things around.
Yep. I do want to see, for once in my life, before I die, I do want to see a stud linebacker drafted in the 1st round, like a real Carl Banks stud.
I was going to mention this. It's not even the Giants for you. I lambasted the Giants for years for lacking at linebacker since the Antonio Pierce days.
It wasn't
really
just lacking. It was
horrible, just completely, just not even considering it. But what I have seen, but what I do in their defense, I feel like it actually ended up being a full NFL thing in a way, maybe not just the Giants, right? You're you're standing your pass rushers up on the front 4 now. You're using more nickel backs for the pass coverage and passing situations, because anytime you have a linebacker in coverage, it's a mismatch pretty much. So I think it's more a way of the world, the NFL landscape, than there's just the Giants. But for people like us, quick history lesson, who I'm 41, you said you're 50, Carl Banks, Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, Gary Reasons,
and I'm not even Pepper Johnson. I'm not even Harry Carson. I think you said, but I'm not even expecting that. I realize it's it's a different era.
Jesse Armstead, Michael Barrow.
Oh, Jesse Armstead, yeah, Michael Barrow. I love Michael Barrow. He was really good. But I'd love to have a really good stud 1st round. I'm not looking for a great linebacking core. I'd love to have a guy who's that premier player. So I'd like to see one at each level. The defensive line, the linebacker, also edge, linebacker, and in the secondary, like a shutdown corner, a real stud, in the middle of the linebacker, that is, and and 1 or 2 really good edge rushers. I want to have an excellent player at each level. But I am dying to get a really good. Who knows? Maybe it'll be Darion Beavers. Maybe he'll develop into that.
There you go.
Just like Jesse Armstead, 7th round pick.
Yeah,
or 8th round pick. It might have been. I think it was 8th round. I think he might have been drafted in the 8th round the last year they had an 8th round.
They did that for a long time. They were making waves with some late round linebacking picks. They lived off that for a while, and then it kind of just disappeared.
Yeah, but I'm excited. Hey, listen, I really love this class. It was a great kickoff with the 1st round, and but overall, I really like the class a lot. I'm excited to see how these guys are used. And Joe, would you be surprised at all if the offense looks better this year than the defense, considering the hits that the defense took? No Peppers, no Logan Ryan, no James Bradbury.
It's tracking that way. I mean, the fear would be that the offense isn't better, and they're both dreadful. But it's tracking like a team that should be able to score some points. Yeah, right. It's tracking as a team that should be able to score some points, but probably going to give some points up also. But I just want to see them go toe to toe with some. I just need to see some improvement. I don't expect 12-5. I don't expect the Super Bowl. I just want to see progression. And the interesting thing is, with the new regime, will the progression be enough to stay with those guys, or is this new group from Buffalo, is 6-11 just going to be another blow up for next year.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. I mean, I think I think Joe Shane's got dreams dancing around, in his mind of just blowing everything up anyway. And I think he wants to really start from scratch with a new quarterback, and we'll see. But listen, I think they did a really good job of launching everything with this draft class, and really adding some real talent to it, man. Hey, listen, damn, we finally got a real potential edge, like a stud edge, and that bookend right tackle to go with Andrew Thomas, man. So, and a lot of I am excited about Wan'dale Robinson. I am excited to see how they use him.
Yes.
So anyway, all right, Joe. Any parting thoughts at all? Or that's it, my friend.
No, I'm right. I'm trying to think of it fantasy wise. Like, what did their draft do to the New York Giants from a fantasy perspective? And, obviously skilled position offensively, you just look at Robinson and it sounds like he's going to hit the field this year. And if Kadarius Toney really gets moved, maybe Robinson does become fantasy viable, especially if it's a PPR, because he seems like he's a high volume type of guy. But other than that, I don't think they really moved their fantasy needle with this draft.
I don't think so either. It's like, we'll see. But I really want to see Daniel
Where
Jones
does Thibodeaux
succeed.
go from an IDP perspective?
You're asking the wrong guy. That's coach.
Yeah,
I don't
me
know.
too. I'm not.
I don't know anything about IDP. You're asking the wrong. But man, I would assume Mike has got to be up there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to be up there. But all right, man. Hey, listen, that's a wrap for the show. Had a great time doing this with you, my friend. And listen, so I'd love to have you on sometime soon, just when you're available. For those who don't know, Joe's the family's been extended fairly recently. New additions, a lot of moving going on as well. A lot of great news on the personal side. When you're available, man, I'd love for you to come on a New York Giants Corner with me, my Giants show that I launched like 4 months ago, but I've only been able to do 4 episodes because I'm busy myself. But I'd love to have you on. Just talk Giants football, man.
It's always a good sign when an hour and 2 minutes goes by fast.
I know. I'm sorry it took so long, man. I'm not surprised because I love talking about this stuff. All right, Joe. Take care, everyone. Our millions of viewers, have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.